ground lease and revision to terms. So I'd like to know and discuss what are the steps that we're taking. We're not discussing the actual negotiation and any elements of it, because those are subject to open meetings law, would be an executive session, the actual negotiations. This is rather a discussion of the timing and the moving parts.
The timing is critical. We're moving quickly, even though again, we're under a time pressure because of the agreement between the tenants and the sponsor regarding the insider price and when he would hold the insider price at the level that it's been agreed to. We are, Kim and I have been dealing with HCR on the affordability plan, and there's work being done not by us but by HCR, and we're working with them to make sure that all the timing comes together, hopefully at the same time. So it's HCR, it's ESD with respect to the amount of the TEP payments, and then it's the negotiation of the amendment to the ground lease. We've started that negotiation. We've had a lot of cooperation from Mr. Hirschhorn. He's given us all the information we needed in order to get an appraisal. And the appraisal, we should have the number by tomorrow, but not the full appraisal until next week. And we've gone through the agreement and given our comments to Mr. Hirschhorn's entity. And so he has that, and we haven't gotten feedback from him. So we're in the middle of the negotiation, and we're basically coordinating with all of the participating entities. We're hoping to meet the deadline. We may have to, in order to, not risk an increase in the insider price, we may have to call a special meeting of the board at some point before February.
What kind of numbers were in the plan that the residents approved, the Westview residents approved?
I don't know those numbers. You know?
I don't know what the numbers are like, but I feel like we're either rubber stamping something because it's a done deal, or we actually have some say. Well, then if we have some say in it and we don't like the numbers as they come out, why wouldn't our discussion happen before those numbers were given to the residents? Because it puts us in a heck of a position.
I don't know the answer to that, Marjorie. I mean, we've been dealing with Hirschhorn, but
It's modeled on, yeah, old house.
yeah.
I can tell you what we were told. We were told that the reason, if the residents are happy with it, it is not our place to, what was it said? It was not our place to decide whether or not it was too much or not, because of the residents had already decided.
Well, I'll tell you that we had a meeting with the task force at their request, and we also had conversations with Hirschhorn before the vote. And I indicated to both groups that we were having an appraisal, that it was very possible that the rent proposed by us would be higher than the Island House rent based upon the increase in the market value, and they should know that before going forward. And that was our statement, and we're not going to agree to an amount that's not realistic based upon the market value, assuming there's an increase in the market value. And basically, because I believe there probably is an increase, I made that statement to all the parties.
There are
so
just so
would
many
be aware of it.
variables. I mean, I think it's similar to Island House, but it's certainly not the same building. There are so many issues that one building has with the other one that we should have been really involved in all along in this. It's certainly before they voted. I don't know what made them vote before, because it really puts us in an awful position.
HCR didn't look at the affordability plan before the vote. ESD hasn't looked at the TEP payment before the vote. So I'm not sure why it's done in this chronology, but that's how it's been done.
Hi, I'm a member of the board of the Westview Task Force, and in the meetings leading up to the conclusion of negotiations, we had meetings which included HCR, and their representatives at that meeting made it fairly clear, just as was recently said by Faye, that they're looking for the tenants to be satisfied with the negotiated arrangement. They were not going to dictate up or down or sideways, but naturally, tenants have an interest in the rental rates being as low as possible and the purchase rates being as low as possible. But that reflected a need to do compromise. And believe me, I sat in hundreds of hours of meeting trying to get a reasonable compromise that all tenants in the building would feel comfortable with. And what we have now is a reasonable compromise. And we're hopeful that the expedited review that you talked about, Susan, will bring us to a satisfactory arrangement from RIOC, from Attorney General, from HRC, in time for the January 30th cutoff date, when new terms start to take a force.
We're gonna try to help you with that.
Thank you.
Well, but we're saying that we're trying to help you, we will rely on our appraisal.
Oh,
We
absolutely.
Of course.
will rely on whatever expert help you require to understand the economics of this, which typically requires that we analyze the anticipated stream of ground rents and other payments in order to determine whether this is fair to the corporation. We will need to have a fairness opinion in the end. So people who need some sleep can look over the Island House package for similar material. We would also need to understand how this fits into the spectrum of the island generally. We would hope that the appraisers consider this as one of the housing projects in the island, and so there's a history and maybe a level of continuity to be considered there.
Can we see that package?
Excuse me?
Can we get a look at the numbers?
Oh, absolutely. Can I get them to you? How can I best get them to you?
Susan, and she can get them
Get them
to
to
us.
Susan? Sure.
Because it's like looking at almost every piece of the puzzle, but not quite,
Oh,
and then
you're-
voting on that puzzle.
Had I
And it puts us
been
in an
prepared,
awful
I could have
position.
brought it with me today, but I will get it to Susan.
Well, you may recall that when we had Island House, whether we're all 100% happy with the result, we did spend a great deal of time analyzing.
Right.
And we did spend a lot of time in the merits, and we had a lot of
Which is what I thought we were gonna do with Westview.
and we will be doing with Westview, compressed into the time frame that we need, so.
Well, then we won't, spend a
Well,
lot
if
of
we-
time, can't spend a lot of time and compress it. We'll
Well,
be spending less time, but that's why I wanna get a head start, let's look at the numbers, and at least we can start asking questions.
we can get those numbers and start, we can ask for the appraisal when that's available. We can review what we did for Island House to see just how that worked. I started to do, but I don't have much time until next week. And then.
Yeah, I wanna look at them side by side and see the actual
Right,
differences
so-
or similarities.
Yeah,
We may have that analysis done for you.
Oh, perfect. Love to
I
see.
think we did do an analysis, or not, our outside counsel did an analysis.
Take whatever you got.
Yeah.
Okay.
Because the more we know, the
Right,
better
so-
informed we can be.
So this is basically putting the committee on notice that we're going to have to be spending some serious time on this.
Correct.
You have a question?
May 15th, a year ago, we received the red herring. Since that time, the AG has requested answers to questions from Mr. Hirschhorn. He has gotten, 5 extensions or something, and I think the latest one takes him to the end of this month, I believe. We haven't seen the responses to those questions. This vote that was taken was pretty much a sham. It was pushed in the tenants, and a lot of people voted for it because they were scared to death. That's what happened, Faye. And there were a group of us that voted, there were a group of people who voted no, but not very many. Of course, they got a majority of people who voted in favor of proceeding. And yet, we have not seen the responses from the owner to the AG's questions or issues. But we're told that the piece of paper, the little, whatever 50-page thing that we got, or 30-page thing, who knows, was the new red herring. That's kind of how it was put to us. And a lot of people were really, really scared because what the task force told everybody was, if we don't vote to do this deal, you will lose your homes. The owner can come out of Mitchell Lama and will throw everybody out. So, of course, they got the vote that they were going for. So, and the election itself, the ballots had signature lines on them. They were not, secret. And they didn't let they weren't letting people put them in the box themselves. They had people at the table who were putting them in, and the board members were in the voting room where they held the vote, and there was somebody stationed at the door when people came in to vote. There was a real problem with this. So if you're gonna negotiate or whatever, or look over the stuff, you should know that there were some real serious problems with the way this was presented to the tenancy and how they scared everybody. They have not done minutes since, I don't know when. They didn't do minutes on the meeting that they held at Manhattan Park. We've been told that they were not that the attorney, our attorney, which is being paid, who is being paid for by Hirshhorn, by the way, told our task force that they're not required, as a 501c3, that they're not required to post minutes, and especially not of that meeting. So make your decision knowing all of this.
Well, one of the things that we will rely on as a corporation in making the decision is whether the ground rent rates, the pricing that we develop, is based on an affordability plan.
It's gonna be based
But
on
the
whatever Hirshhorn wants.
the determination as to whether an affordability plan exists is a matter of expert opinion from HCR. And so, if any individual feels that HCR is basing or would base their opinion on incorrect information, you should move and send information to HCR directly.
Don't worry.
But they will be the ones who would opine as to whether an affordability plan exists. Our work and our result will be based on that information. We rely on experts. We rely on experts for appraisal, which we may challenge their expertise, but we need to accept expert results. We would need to rely on HCR for an expert opinion regarding affordability.
If this, in an effort not to extend this conversation, which could go on for a half an hour, I would just like to say that the items that Sherry shared with you are not items that I believe are appropriate or factually correct.
We're not concerned
But I understand
about,
that.
we're not concerned about that at this point.
I understand
Because
that.
we would be
Ballots that
looking for an opinion from HCR. It's not our job,
Got it.
and it's not our expertise to make a determination as to whether the affordability plan is a valid affordability plan for purposes of producing discounts on the otherwise market value ground rent, which would prevail. So that is something that we would look to outside experts.
If you're gonna doubt, if you're gonna doubt, or if you wanna take his word for it, there are other tenants in the room right now, you can ask.
Sherry, we're not doubting it, well,
But
how.
I just want,
No,
just to
but
counter
the
what
point is,
Paul
it's not
has
our
said.
job. Our
I
job is to
understand, I
negotiate
understand that,
agreements.
but just to counter what Paul said and to keep it, this is public. This is recorded and I want it in the record. Thank you.
I just have one question. What does the sponsor, what kind of requirements does he have to fulfill before you grant the extension of the ground lease? Is there certain requirements that he has to fulfill before you can do that, like completing some of the work that's been stopped in our building?
All the requirements.
Yeah.
Well, I guess.
I mean,
we have-
if you're saying that there are some breaches under the ground lease that we're not aware of, you should so advise us.
Unfinished work on the
Unfinished
building.
work on the building?
Well, I don't know whether that's a breach of our ground lease.
I don't know.
So-
I mean, that's
So,
why I have
you know,
that
whether
question.
or not the sponsor has done things that you believe he should be doing, I don't know whether it's within our jurisdiction unless
It's very little.
it's subject to a provision in our ground lease.
But-
So
That's
I
more
don't-
when you're
Understand
doing the
our
rent,
piece
like-
of the puzzle is the negotiation of the ground lease. The
And-
negotiation of that ground
Okay.
lease.
And the document which describes in an appropriate way the condition of the building would be the black book ultimately.
How do we get to a black book when we haven't actually gotten a final red herring with answers from the owner to the AG's questions? How does that happen?
Well, we
You
certainly,
just call the AG's office.
People have been in touch with the AG and not gotten very good responses. You know, everybody wants out of this program and wants rid of us all. So, you're the last bastion.
Procedural question.
As it were.
The appraisal, does it take into account, the unfinished work, or does it assume that the work that has been started will be completed and the appraisal is based on the completion of work started, or is it based on a snapshot of, here it is today, yes, these things have not been done yet? Does an engineering report flow into that expert's opinion?
That's usually done in the negotiations with the committee. Did you take?
I don't know.
Is that
I
something?
think
It's
when
not
Chris does it, I think they look at the building as it is at that moment.
That's
I don't think
what-
that
Okay,
appraisal,
and the-
yeah, they have
and
to
the
say,
thing
this
also
is what
to
it's worth if
remember
we sold it
that
tomorrow.
the condition of the building and the physical plant is more an element for for tax equivalent payments. RIOC is concerned with the value of the land.
Right.
And the land is one step removed from the building. I mean, there's a way of guesstimating what the land value is based on the value of the property owner, but it's a guesstimate.
Yeah.
And so an expert opinion will be looking at the land.
Sure,
And we'll be talking about what could be on the land, what is on the land. But that's more general, it's one remove from what we're concerned about. Which is a limited concern, it's not everything.
Right.
It's the land, it's the ground rent assessed on the land. Comparable and fair compared to the other projects on the island, and that's our job.
So Carrie, your question, I would address it.
I'm sorry.
What?
No, I'm just saying because they started the facade work and they had a stop order on the building because there wasn't any scaffolding in place. And with all the heavy winds we've had, I can see it from my 7th floor apartment, that there are big gaping holes under air conditioners that, should have been, secured before they left.
Well, local law 11 work will have to proceed. That's a separate timetable from anything else.
Okay.
But again, what we will be considering are all these elements to determine the value of the land, to determine the fair ground rent, considering any appropriate discount for an affordability point. And we'll be doing that, I guess, on a quick step. And I think that's the discussion for now. When there's a timetable, I ask it to be circulated. When material becomes available, I ask it to be circulated so we can start to work on it soonest.
And presumably tomorrow we'll get a copy of what you guys.
Absolutely.
And then if it's useful to you to have
Have an
me then in the
electronic copy?
sessions, to try to move it.
I think I might have an electronic copy.
That would
but
be
I'm-
the best,
I'm
and then
not
you can
sure.
email it to me quick.